Ever notice how some people just seem to breeze through challenges? They achieve these amazing things and you kind of wonder, what's their secret?
Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we break down sources to find those golden nuggets of wisdom, the kind that can really change your whole perspective on things. Today we're exploring Zig Ziglar's little instruction book. It's jam-packed with insights about success, motivation, that sort of thing, and we're here to unpack it all for you.
You got it. This isn't just rah-rah motivational stuff. Ziglar really gets into the nitty-gritty of building a successful life. Attitude, self-esteem, taking action, building strong relationships. It's all connected, surprisingly so. And we're going to go beyond just listing these principles. We're going to see what makes them work, what you can actually do with them. Might even find some unexpected links along the way.
Totally. Let's start with something fundamental, optimism.
Hmm.
Everyone knows the half-full versus half-empty glass thing.
Right, often attributed to Robert Schiller, but Ziglar uses it to springboard into something even deeper.
Yeah, he ties it to this urge to contribute. Exactly. And what's fascinating is he sees optimism as more than just, happy thoughts. It's like fuel for actually taking action, for being proactive.
Makes sense. If you see the glass half full, you're naturally thinking about filling it up, right? You're part of the solution.
Exactly. Whereas with a pessimistic outlook, you're focused on what's missing or what you might lose. You're more likely to react out of fear, maybe.
It's about, taking control. The optimist believes they can influence the outcome. Ziglar even says optimists are people who, when they wear out their shoes, just figure they are back on their feet.
Love that. It's reframing a setback. Not as a defeat, but as a chance to start fresh, to utilize your abilities. That's resilience in a nutshell.
It really is. Okay, let's move on to another idea. Going the extra mile. It almost sounds cliche.
It might sound simple, but think about it in terms of, exceeding expectations.
Yes.
Taking initiative. Suddenly it's not so basic, is it?
I see what you mean. And Ziglar's story about Charlie Scott running in the grocery store to basically work for a raise is a great example. It's not just doing your job, it's actively finding ways to add value.
Right. And that kind of motivation usually means you're really engaged, truly committed. It's an investment in your future, your growth. Ziglar says, when we do more than we are paid to do, eventually we will be paid more for what we do.
So true. You're creating a surplus of value. Okay, so we're working hard, we're optimistic, but what happens when things get tough? When we hit obstacles?
That's where you need mental flexibility. Ziglar uses this great analogy about uplook. It's like a young sailor in a storm. To stay steady, he focuses on looking up, not down at the waves.
I like that, because when you're fixated on the problem right in front of you, your perspective gets really narrow. You can't see a way out.
Exactly. Sometimes you need to intentionally shift your focus, see the bigger picture. That's how you find solutions.
He says, when the outlook isn't good, try the uplook. It's always good. It's a reminder that we have the power to choose what we focus on.
Powerful stuff. Now, this might seem counterintuitive when talking about personal success, but Ziglar talks about the importance of helping others.
Yeah, how does that fit in?
Well, it's about interconnectedness. He tells this parable about heaven and hell with these super long forks and knives.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So everyone has access to food, right? But in hell, they can't feed themselves. The utensils are too long to reach their own mouths.
Oof, so they're surrounded by abundance but starving.
Exactly. While in heaven, everyone thrives because they feed each other. It's a powerful image.
And it really illustrates his quote, you can get everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want.
That's it. There's a kind of reciprocity there. It's not just about being altruistic, although that's good, of course. It's about recognizing that our success is tied to others.
Makes you think.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's get down to the foundation. Character.
The bedrock, right. Ziglar quotes Arthur Friedman, who said, "Men of genius are admired. Men of wealth are envied. Men of power are feared, but only men of character are trusted."
That trust, that belief in someone's integrity, that's what really matters in the long run, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's the difference between chasing external validation and living with an internal compass. Ziglar tells this story about trade school students who acted totally different when a camera crew showed up.
Yeah, I remember that one. It's like they were putting on a show.
Exactly. It's about who you are when no one's watching.
Mm.
Okay, so character's crucial, but what about how we see ourselves, our self-worth? Ziglar ties this to, God's love.
Interesting. How does that work?
He believes everyone has inherent worth, that we're all created in a certain image. Then he asks, What does it say about us when we put ourselves down all the time?
Like we're not recognizing our true value.
Right. He suggests we look in the mirror and say, God loves you, and so do I. It's a way to practice self-acceptance.
Love that. It's intentionally pushing back against those negative thoughts. Okay, on the road to success, we're bound to stumble. What does Ziglar say about failure?
He says it's an event, not a definition. It's a detour, not the destination. And he thinks the biggest problem is our reaction to failure, especially that fear of what others will think.
Oh, I know that feeling. It can paralyze you, stop you from even trying.
Exactly. Ziglar wants us to see failure as a teacher, a chance to learn and grow. He says make failure your teacher, not your undertaker.
So powerful. Okay, speaking of moving forward, he's got some thoughts on where you end up versus where you start.
He believes your starting point, whether it's your background or your skills, doesn't have to determine your destination. He even points to a bunch of successful people who overcame huge obstacles, like disabilities or difficult childhoods.
I love the Neil Rubenstein story. He became president of Harvard, but came from pretty humble beginnings. It shows that where you start is not as important as where you finish.
It's all about the journey, the choices you make, the perseverance, which brings us to personal responsibility.
Taking ownership.
Right? Ziglar boils it down to this. If it is to be, it is up to me. 10 little words, but so powerful. He says inaction usually comes from fear of failure, and that leads to regret.
It's like Vicky Hitska said, will you look back on life and say, I wish I had, or I'm glad I did?
Whoa, that's powerful.
It is. Okay, let's talk about relationships, starting with love. Ziglar mentions 1 Corinthians 13.5 about love being active and forgiving.
Yeah, and he brings it down to earth with his True Love Daily checklist.
A checklist for love.
Basically, it's about doing things that show love. Being patient, speaking kind words, not being jealous or rude. Love is more than a feeling.
It's action.
It's putting in the effort every day.
Absolutely. Okay, shifting gears back to individual success. Ziglar connects hard work with success. He even mentions Proverbs 22.29 about standing before kings through diligence.
And he talks about the traits of self-made wealthy people. They're hard workers, they persevere, they have self-discipline, and a lot of them are the first in their families to achieve that kind of wealth.
It shows that success isn't just handed to you, you got to earn it. And Ziglar says, put all your excuses aside and remember this. You are capable. But what keeps us going? What fuels that effort?
Encouragement. He calls it injecting people with hope. He even tells the story about almost quitting sales early in his career.
Yeah, and then his president said something that turned everything around.
He went from struggling to becoming a top performer in like a year.
Mm-hmm.
All because someone believed in him.
It's incredible how much someone else's belief can impact us. And Ziglar reminds us that this starts early, with the environment we create for kids.
He talks about Dorothy Nolte's poem. Criticism leads to condemnation, praise to appreciation. That one. It shows how powerful our words and actions are, especially for children.
So true. If a child lives with praise, he learns to appreciate. And honestly, that applies to everyone, not just kids. We all need encouragement. Okay, even with a supportive environment, achieving big goals takes serious persistence, right? What does Ziglar say about that?
He has this great line. The difference between a big shot and a little shot is that a big shot's just a little shot that kept on shooting. Then he talks about Thomas Edison and the light bulb. Thousands of attempts, not failures, just learning what didn't work.
It's a powerful mindset shift. It's like Edison was saying, okay, that didn't work, but what can I learn from it?
Exactly. Never give up.
Speaking of valuable resources, let's talk about time.
Ziglar emphasizes making time your servant, not your master. He tells this amazing story about a wealthy guy in prison in Atlanta who managed to build a successful business while locked up. It's about using your time intentionally, no matter the constraints.
It's like Proverbs says, hard work means prosperity, only a fool idles away his time. But there will be times when quitting just seems easier. What does Ziglar say about giving up?
He calls failure the line of least persistence. He compares the guy who quit drilling for oil right before hitting a gusher to Harry S. Truman, who had a ton of setbacks in politics but eventually became president.
Persistence pays off. Ziglar's message is clear. You are not a failure until you quit trying.
So true.
Okay, we can't always control what happens to us, the circumstances. What does Ziglar say about that?
He argues that it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. He talks about Charlie Wedemeyer, who had Lou Gehrig's disease, but still maintained a positive attitude and made a huge impact.
Wow, that's inspiring. It really makes you think about how you can overcome anything. Ziglar says, It is not what happens to you that determines how far you go in life. It is what you do with what happens to you.
Right. And that ties into the potential we all have. Ziglar really believes in that.
He says we each have unique abilities, and it's our responsibility to use them.
He warns against getting stuck in negative self-perceptions or letting past experiences hold you back.
It's like he says, you will make a lousy anybody else, but you are the best you in existence.
Exactly. You have something unique to offer.
Okay, let's talk family, specifically parenting. Ziglar talks about love and discipline.
He says true love means doing what's best for your child, even if it's not the easiest choice, like setting limits on screen time, junk food, those kinds of things.
He says the parent who truly has a good self-image understands that real love demands they do what is best for the child.
Tough love.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's what's needed.
And a key way to show love to your children is time.
Absolutely. Ziglar says, for a child, love is spelled T-I-M-E. He tells this sad story about a judge whose father was a famous legal scholar, but always too busy for him. The son felt like his dad was a lost friend.
Heartbreaking. It's a good reminder to prioritize time with our loved ones. Okay, let's get back to success. Ziglar believes that real opportunity starts from within.
He cautions against chasing those get-rich-quick schemes without building a solid foundation. He says success and happiness are choices we make.
It's about what's inside, not external things. The real opportunity for success lies within the person and not in the job. To really make the most of those inner resources, we need to prioritize.
Right, and that means saying no to good things so you can say yes to the best things. Ziglar talks about regularly evaluating his goals and realizing he had to eliminate certain things because there just wasn't enough time.
It's tough, but sometimes you have to cut things out. He says, I've got to say no to the good so I can say yes to the best. Speaking of resources, he compares the depletion of natural resources to the potential we waste within ourselves.
He says, we deplete man's natural resources by failing to use them. He uses the image of a dime and a $20 gold piece both lying at the bottom of the ocean. Both are worthless because no one's using them. It's the same with our potential.
Wow, that's a good analogy. Okay, let's talk about goals. Having a sense of direction is so important.
Ziglar believes that people with clear goals achieve more and faster in every area of their lives. He even mentions research that shows goal setters have higher incomes, are more enthusiastic and satisfied, and are even healthier.
It's amazing what a little direction can do, but big goals can be intimidating, right? What does he say about that?
Break them down into smaller steps. Take control of your time, day by day. Like eating an elephant one bite at a time.
It's a classic analogy for a reason. When you break goals into increments and start controlling your time, things begin to happen. It's about consistency.
Exactly. Ziglar talks about writing his book, raising his children with good values, and how it all came down to daily effort, small steps adding up over time. He says, by the mile it's a trial, but by the inch it's a cinch.
That's reassuring. Even the biggest journeys are made one step at a time. Okay, let's talk about our outlook. Ziglar encourages a positive perspective.
He says to shift from being a fault finder to a good finder. He even recommends making lists of positive things and talking about them. He tells a story about someone whose whole attitude and work performance improved just by focusing on the good things.
He makes a funny observation. Some people find fault like there was a reward for it. So true.
Right. It's like you train your brain to see the positive, and it becomes a habit. And that positivity can actually affect how you experience time, according to Ziglar.
Really? How so?
He says having clear goals and a positive attitude sort of programs the left side of your brain, the analytical side, and that frees up the right side, the creative side.
Interesting. It's like a disciplined athlete who can improvise within the structure of the game.
Exactly. Direction literally creates time, Ziglar says.
I love that. Okay, let's talk about work. What does he say about having a good attitude towards your job?
He really believes that loving your work leads to a more successful and fulfilling life. He tells the story of John Nevin, who rose through the ranks at World Book Encyclopedia because he genuinely loved his job.
When a job is loved, work makes life sweet, purposeful, and fruitful.
Well said.
Okay, we've talked about setting an example for kids. How does that tie in with work?
Ziglar says parents shouldn't just talk about values like honesty, they need to live them. He gives examples like lying on the phone or using radar detectors to avoid speeding tickets. Kids are watching everything.
Actions speak louder than words. Mama Ziglar said it best. Children pay more attention to what you do than what you say.
Couldn't agree more.
So work ethic plus integrity, those are the foundation. What does Ziglar call that?
The success family. He says work is the father and integrity is the mother.
Love that. It paints such a clear picture. All right, let's circle back to relationships.
This time focusing on how our own character affects them. Ziglar believes that the quality of our relationships reflects who we are as people.
He tells that story about the guy wearing his wedding ring on the wrong finger. It's funny, but it makes you think.
It's those little actions, those everyday attitudes that matter most. It's about being the right kind of person.
And it ties back to commitment. Ziglar says that who we are today is largely because of the choices we've made. If we want to change, we have to change our choices.
He says true desire leads to change. People who achieve their dreams are the ones who commit to them, who put in the effort.
Someone wise once said, "You are the way you are because that's the way you want to be."
I love that. And speaking of commitment, Ziglar shares something beautiful about parenting.
Tell me about it.
He says one of the best things a parent can do for their child is to love their spouse. He tells the story of his son, saying that the most important thing about him was that he loved his mom. It gave the son a sense of security.
The best thing a parent can do for a child is to love his or her spouse.
So simple, but so profound.
It really is. Okay, let's talk about caring for others. What does Ziglar say about that?
He defines it as actively helping each other. He tells this story about his assistant, Jerry Arrowwood, who delivered some cookware for him and ended up feeling much more confident and motivated as a result.
So sometimes taking action leads to motivation, not the other way around.
Exactly. Don't wait until you feel like taking a positive action. Take the action, and then you will feel like doing it.
I like that. What about compliments?
Ziglar thinks they're incredibly powerful, calling them one of the most effective teaching and motivational methods in existence. He tells this story about a singer who was about to quit, but then someone gave her a sincere compliment, and it revitalized her career. And giving a compliment also makes you feel good. Ziglar encourages us to share sincere praise whenever we can.
Makes sense. It's a win-win situation. Okay, we've got to talk about effectiveness versus just being busy.
Right. Ziglar quotes Thomas K. Conlon, who said, "Efficiency is doing things right. Effectiveness is doing the right things." So it's about focusing on the tasks that matter most and getting rid of the stuff that doesn't.
It's about working smarter, not just harder. And that brings us back to time.
He uses a powerful image, a poem about a lost golden hour. It reminds us that time is precious and we can't get it back. We all have the same 24 hours, and it's our most valuable resource.
Every moment counts. Ziglar then takes a broader view, saying that what we do outside of work affects our success on the job.
He asks, what are you reading? Are you attending workshops? What kind of people do you surround yourself with?
Those are good questions.
He tells a story about Lori Majors, his assistant, who significantly improved her skills through continuous learning. It's about investing in yourself.
Employment security rather than job security. Love that.
Me too. Okay, this is a more personal topic, but Ziglar talks about having a spiritual foundation.
It's definitely something that resonates with a lot of people.
He shares his own experience, his Dependence Day. It wasn't a sudden thing, but a gradual shift towards trusting a higher power. He compares it to how the earth revolves around the sun.
Beautiful analogy. And for those who believe in a higher power, he says that achieving truly great things often requires that connection.
He tells a story about someone wearing a religious symbol but not really living by it. And then he says, you can no more do God's work without God than you could have sunshine without the sun.
Makes you think. Okay, back to practical matters. What does Ziglar say about the effort it takes to be successful?
He says, the price of success is much lower than the price of failure. He tells the story of the painter Renoir, who kept painting even with terrible arthritis, saying, the pain passes, but the beauty remains.
That's powerful. It's like short-term pain for long-term gain.
Exactly. And Ziglar truly believes in our potential for greatness. He says, man was designed for accomplishment, engineered for success, and endowed with the seeds of greatness.
We have so much to offer.
We do. And the biggest failure, according to Ziglar, is not trying at all.
He uses a baseball analogy. If you never swing the bat, you'll never hit the ball. Even if you miss, at least you tried. You learned something.
Right. And then there's the parable about the talents. Ziglar says we need to use our abilities, invest them. Take what you have and use it, and your talent will be increased.
Don't bury your talents. He also talks about how what we put out into the world comes back to us.
Yeah, the law of reciprocity. He tells a cute story about a little boy shouting in a valley and hearing his own echo back. Whether it's negativity or positivity, life is an echo. What you send out comes back.
Interesting. And we've talked about self-perception, how important that is.
Ziglar says, the way you see yourself today will affect your performance today. So if you have negative self-talk, challenge it. Replace it with positive affirmations.
Fake it till you make it kind of thing.
Exactly. And sometimes having someone else believe in you can make all the difference. Ziglar shares a story about a businessman who treated a pencil seller with respect, and it completely changed the seller's life.
It's amazing how a little kindness can go such a long way.
It truly is. And Ziglar says our limitations often come from a lack of hope, not a lack of resources. He quotes John Johnson, who said, "Men and women are limited not by the place of their birth, but by the size of their hope."
It's all about how big you're willing to dream.
Right. And to make those dreams a reality, Ziglar stresses the importance of writing down your goals. Until you commit your goals to paper, you have intentions that are seeds without soil.
It's like taking that first step, making it real. Okay, switching gears a bit, what does Ziglar say about leadership?
He believes in leading by example, giving your best to get the best out of others.
Like Harvey Firestone said, you get the best out of others when you give the best of yourself.
And General Schwarzkopf defined leadership as having competence, character, taking action, being ethical, and also being empathetic and understanding.
True leaders inspire those around them.
For sure.
And Ziglar reminds us that true success is about more than just money.
Exactly. He says money can buy a house, but not a home. Pleasure, but not happiness. It's about having a well-rounded life, fulfilling relationships, inner peace.
He says, money will buy all kinds of things for my family, but it won't buy their love.
That's what truly matters. And speaking of family, what does Ziglar say about creating a loving environment for your children?
He says kids are drawn to excitement but stay where there's love. He encourages parents to express pride in their children and to be enthusiastic about their accomplishments.
It's about making them feel valued and loved.
Exactly. And what if we're not getting the results we want? What does Ziglar say about that?
He uses the classic definition of insanity. One definition of insanity is to believe that you can keep on doing what you've been doing and get different results. If what you're doing isn't working, change it up.
Don't be afraid to try something new. What about how we interact with others?
Ziglar says our attitude towards others often determines how they treat us. When you choose to be pleasant and positive in the way you treat others, you have also chosen, in most cases, how you're going to be treated by others. He even tells a story about how a simple good morning at the airport led to a much better experience for him and his son.
It's like setting a positive tone.
Exactly. And then he talks about a cycle that keeps us moving forward. Motivation, attitude, confidence, persistence.
Tell me more about that.
So motivation fuels a positive attitude, which builds confidence, which helps you persist. It's like a turning point in a football game where suddenly there's hope and belief. Ziglar says we need to regularly feed ourselves with motivational input.
I like that. It's like giving yourself a pep talk.
Yep. And for those who want to be champions in any area of life, there's one essential ingredient.
Discipline.
Discipline is key. Ziglar says, check the records. There has never been an undisciplined person who was a champion. He gives different definitions of discipline, emphasizing self-control and training. He quotes Isaac Stern, the violinist, who said that musicians are made, not born, through discipline and hard work.
So true. Talent is only the starting point. What about aging? Ziglar has some interesting thoughts on that.
He challenges the idea of mandatory retirement, saying it wastes valuable experience and intellect. He even points out that Bismarck implemented retirement at 65 for political reasons, not because people suddenly become useless at that age.
Interesting point.
And he quotes this line, "You're not old until you have lost all of your marvels."
I love that. What about having a moral compass?
Ziglar talks about the inner peace that comes from living according to your values. He shares the story of Catherine Power, who was a fugitive for years, but eventually turned herself in and found peace in taking responsibility.
It's about being true to yourself.
Exactly. Ted Koppel said, there's harmony and inner peace to be found in following a moral compass that points in the same direction.
Wise words. Ziglar also talks about the importance of having a mission in life.
He says, outstanding people have one thing in common, an absolute sense of mission. He compares it to driving with or without directions. If you know where you're going, you're more likely to get there.
A mission gives you purpose and direction.
Right. And Ziglar reminds us that we have control over how we feel about ourselves.
How so?
He quotes Eleanor Roosevelt, who said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." He compares people to valuable Rembrandt paintings. Our worth is inherent.
We're all masterpieces in our own way.
Beautifully said.
Okay, what about problems? Those are inevitable, right?
Ziglar believes in confronting problems head-on. He tells a story about a friend who was addicted to pornography and had to learn to avoid triggers. He encourages us to be honest about our weaknesses and seek help when we need it.
Facing your fears.
Exactly. James Baldwin said it well. Confrontation doesn't always bring a solution to the problem, but until you confront the problem, there will be no solution.
Makes sense. What about time? Ziglar keeps coming back to that.
He does, and for good reason. He urges us to be mindful of how we spend our 1,440 daily moments. Today, be aware of how you are spending your 1,440 beautiful moments and spend them wisely. He talks about focused effort leading to growth and unfocused effort leading to, well, not much.
Make each moment count.
Right. And then there's denial. Ziglar says it's ignoring the obvious. He gives an example of people being just friends when there's clearly more going on.
Oh, those situations can get messy.
They can. His advice is to acknowledge the truth and remember your commitments.
Honesty is always the best policy. Okay, what about when we hit obstacles on the way to our goals?
Ziglar says we should change our approach, not our goals. He uses the analogy of an airplane pilot changing course to reach Dallas because of the wind. The destination stays the same, but you got to be flexible with the route.
When obstacles arise, change your direction to reach your goal, not the decision to get there. I like that.
Me too. Okay, last but not least, feeding your mind.
What does he say about that?
Ziglar emphasizes that our minds are incredibly powerful and that we need to be careful about what we feed them. He tells a story about a woman who experienced pain after a fake surgery. It shows how powerful the mind-body connection is.
Wow, that's wild.
Right. And he encourages us to feed our minds with good things.
Positive input equals positive output.
Exactly. And finally, he makes an important distinction between intelligence and education.
I'm curious to hear his take on that.
He says that formal education isn't the only path to success. He points to people like Henry Ford and Thomas J. Watson, who were incredibly successful but didn't have a lot of formal schooling. He says dedication is more important than education alone.
So don't make excuses. Use what you have.
Exactly. And you know what else Ziglar thinks is important? Smiling. He says the most destitute person in the world is the one without a smile. He encourages us to spread joy by smiling and giving compliments. Join the Smile and Compliment Club, he says.
I'm in.
Me too. Okay, one more thing. Habits.
Oh, those are tough to break.
They can be. Ziglar says we need to be intentional about the habits we choose because once they take hold, they're hard to shake. He gives the example of nicotine cravings. He says, the chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they are too strong to be broken.
Wise words. And when we experience defeats, what does Ziglar say?
He says, if you learn from a defeat, you haven't really lost. He uses a great analogy from Kaveh Rab. A leaky tire. A defeat should take something out of you, but it shouldn't keep you down.
Bounce back. And Ziglar reminds us to look ahead, to have a vision.
He says long-range goals help us push through those short-term frustrations. And he encourages us to take action, even if we don't have all the answers. He says, go as far as you can see, and when you get there, you'll always be able to see farther.
Love that. It's about taking that first step. Expert speaker.